Two, one. Hi guys, I'm Avery and I'm back with another video episode, sorry. And today I will be having someone help us talk about grief. This is Suzanne Jabor, and she can introduce herself.
Thanks so much, Avery. I'm so excited to be on with you as you branch out to having guests. It's so fun. So yeah, I'm here to talk about grief. I love talking about grief, which I know most people don't. So I'm just here to help you talk about it. And yeah, I'm a grieving
Yeah.
mom. I come to talking about grief after the loss of my son and realizing that I didn't know enough about grief. People weren't talking about enough. We didn't know how to support each other. And so looking at ways that I could help shift that led me to grief education and getting a certification in that. And then finding places like your brilliant podcast to come and talk about it and help people out.
Yeah, and I think this will also help bring in a different view into this as, I mean, grief comes in all different ways, as we talked about before, but I mean, I don't really know as much about grief, and not really, like you said, not a lot of people do, and most people think it's just one, grief comes in one way, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, and it can come in any ways, and there's no timeline to grief, and there's, I don't know, I don't really know how to explain it. That's why Suzanne here is going to kind of help, but I kind of wanted to start by talking about the different types of grief. So if you kind of want to start that, and I can add on or put
Sounds good. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so important to start there because we have this misconception that grief only happens when someone you care about dies. And
Mhm.
in fact, grief happens with every loss that we have. So the loss of a friendship, the loss of an opportunity, the loss of a job, the loss of a pet, the loss of, even sometimes when the change is something you're excited about and you're looking forward to, it still has loss attached to it. So
Mhm.
not all of those griefs are going to be big and not all of them are going to take you out, but some of them will. And sometimes it's the ones we don't predict that are the ones that are
Exactly.
hardest for us to process and deal with. And, I think because we have this idea that there's only some losses that are worth grieving or where you kind of get permission to do it,
Mhm.
that we just have to decide together that we're giving ourselves permission for all of it because every time we experience it, we learn more about it, how it works for us. And if we talk about it with each other, like we do everything else that we learn,
Yep.
then we can learn from each other too. And then we can feel more connected instead of feeling isolated, which is what happens most of the time.
Yeah, and I feel like by talking about it more, and even with our peers or anyone you kind of want to, it also,
Mm.
I don't know, there is kind of stigma around it. I think it helps educate more and helps, I don't know, kind of spread the awareness and the information about it, and it helps people just have more information and realize that they're allowed to grieve and for any type of instance, and that, again, like I said, grieving doesn't have a timeline, and no matter what type of grieving it is. um and I think that's also hard as you parent. I mean, I think I'm not a parent yet, clearly. I have a bit of time, but I think as a child growing up, I think, or for any child or anyone who's how is growing up, I think how your parents parent you and how you kind of, you know, how you kind of use that information
Hmm.
for things that you experience and for like how you react to the people around you. And luckily for me, I had a good experience with that growing up, that I was allowed to show my emotions with that and allowed, I don't know, they just kind of talked to me about it. And but a lot of people aren't talked to about it. And again, lots of parents, unfortunately, do make their kids feel like that you can only grieve during from a death or something like catastrophic. And that you're not allowed to grieve for something big or smaller, anything. And I think that's where it comes in, where a lot of people don't know and there is stigma around it and that type. But I think putting the information out there, it's not just information, but helping spread awareness helps everyone in the future and in the time of their lives they are in. And maybe something in the past that happened, being able to grieve properly, or just being able to be like, find peace with it. It doesn't need to specifically be peace, but grieve properly for something that did happen in your past, maybe. So I think, I don't know, that's for me, that's how I think about it. And of course, I've only been through 16 years of life and I have a lot more to go. But I think knowing this now and just getting just being able to know this now, I think will help me in the future. And again, maybe things that are in the past that I haven't grieved over, no matter what. So that's kind of my take on it. And I know not everyone views it the same way, but sometimes you can change the way you view it, or how you want to teach it to your kids or to your peers or your friends or your own parents or your family. I mean, you could teach so many people so many different life experiences or different things you can use. So yeah.
And I think you touched on a couple really important things. One is, in North America anyway, and in most of Western culture, we're not really great at emotions. We don't really talk about them. We're kind of taught from when we're really young not to actually even really feel them. And part of what happens in grief is you're bombarded by emotions. So it's an interesting spot for us to start to have some of those conversations about emotions and how they're really showing up for us, and even learning how to name them. I end up talking to so many people that I say are kind of caught on that like mad, sad, glad trifecta. That's about the layer of emotions they go to. And of course, emotions are way more nuanced than that. There's way more detail you can get into, and naming of the real specificity of what's happening for you. And grief is a place to practice that. And I think especially if we talk about griefs that aren't of a loved one who's really intrinsically a part of your life, that's a really big place to start connecting with your emotions. And so, of course, we feel overwhelmed. But if we practiced with other emotional experiences and with other losses that maybe aren't as catastrophic in our lives, even though sometimes in the moment they feel like that.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Right. Then we get practice. I always sort of jokingly, but not really jokingly say, I was a grieving mom grieving out loud. I am not a good first assignment. Like if you've never talked about emotions before and you're really scared of grief,
And then all
you
of a
can't
sudden,
show up for someone like where I was.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
if you've practiced, what if with our friends, with people we feel safe having those conversations with, instead of our kind of almost toxic positivity where we want to be encouraging, right? So we say things like, oh, it'll be all right. Or,
I'm
not talking
okay.
so loud
That
tone, but
like, and kind of,
something better will come along,
yeah,
right? You weren't supposed to get that one because there's something better waiting. If you think about jobs or boyfriends or all that kind of
yes.
stuff,
Things that
what if
didn't
instead we
happen.
said, what if instead we just acknowledged the loss and said, oh my gosh, like I know you really wanted that job because of whatever reason. And I'm so sad you didn't get it. And you must feel a bunch of things about that.
And then based on that, you can kind of, this grief comes in a form of therapy, DBT, and dialectical, and I go through DBT, and how you can change your behaviors into something that helps you positively. And especially that, what you said is a major thing that I'm working through too, is not immediately going to the negative and focusing on that, or like trying to do toxic positivity, but there's kind of in the middle of, I'm really upset I didn't get that job. I really wanted it and I feel upset, but I can try again. I can work on it and I can apply again, or I can find maybe another job that would suit me better. And that it doesn't need to be exactly that. It doesn't need to go exactly to the but. You can feel that grief, but you can also I feel like could be toxic positivity in a way, but it could also be like focusing on the grief aspect and how you can make it out of it. And I think it really depends what stage of it you're in and what the grief is. Cause again, I don't want to like pinpoint it on a certain type of grief. But I think that's something you can kind of put into it. if you're trying to like stay positive about an outcome
Mhm.
while also grieving something. And that's what I need to work on, because I immediately, when I'm upset about something that happened, again, no matter what it is, I
Mhm.
immediately go to the negatives and I focus on that, instead of I could focus on that while also trying to focus on bringing positivity into it. No matter
Yeah.
what positivity it is, because none of this has to have a certain pinpoint of positivity, grief, anger. Like there's doesn't need to be a specific pinpoint of how you deal with it and why you deal with it or are feeling that way. So,
Yeah. And for me, I think it's really important that it's a both and. I
mhm.
can feel really sad about this thing that happened, and what did I learn, or what
Yes,
can I do next, or what, and you can do all of that while you feel sad about it. I
exactly.
realized really early, because my son died, so I knew, like, I'm going to be in grief and feel grief about that forever, for the
Only
rest
the
of my
rest of
life.
your life. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so if that's the case, then I have to feel grief and
Find
whatever else it is.
positivity
And
and
I also just want to normalize that negativity thing. We actually, as humans, have what they call a negativity bias. And I know you would be fascinated by that. You could do a bunch of
yeah.
Googling and chat GPTing about it. But we have this negativity bias that helps us see like the worst case scenario. And it helps us see the most awful thing that could happen, which
Yes.
was super helpful when we wanted to stay safe from a saber-toothed tiger.
Mm-hmm.
But at this moment in our history, anyway, there are not a lot of saber-toothed tigers coming for us, but
Yes,
we still have that wired in us. So we have to be able to hold the both and, like, my
exactly.
body is in fear and I'm in freeze mode because I'm so upset about this thing. And there
Mm-hmm.
is no saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
So,
So
what can I do
yeah,
with, right?
and
How
that's
do I
exactly
do,
like
like, I'm,
yeah, and it's not like the example I used was a but. For this certain idea, it's a but and or it could be anything, but that also can bring in positivity or something that makes you feel better about it. Because with me, I think again, what you're saying, I immediately go to negatives, and that's another part of DBT. I think everything we're talking about, it combines into different things in the DBT that I'm learning about. I wish I had my book with me because I could like I don't remember exactly in my mind, but it's all the negative things that you immediately do. Like it's for example, if you're like interacting with someone and your own securities, they're not saying this out loud, but you're immediately thinking, oh my gosh, they think I'm weird, or like, oh my gosh, they think I can't do this. They don't want to talk to me anymore. You're immediately going to the negative because of your own insecurities or insecurities that someone put on you. I mean, again, it's an open book. You can't really pinpoint anything, but how your body can immediately go into that. And there are ways you can make it better, but like you said, we kind of already have something where we automatically go to the negative.
Mhm.
So, I mean, for me, I hate saying for me, but I just want to make sure people know that like I say that I've said this in my previous two recordings, that I don't want to try to put this something on someone to make them feel like this is how it is for everyone. So
Mhm.
that's why I say for me,
But it
because
is a
it,
shared experience for
yeah,
most of us. And I think it's really important that you name, like, this is what's true for you. That might not be what's true for somebody else, but
and
there's probably a similarity,
that's
right?
okay either way. Um,
Yeah. And I also think it's okay, it's okay to have a pity party. Like, sometimes you just need to have a good old pity party. And what I
exactly.
do, like, I fell now just over a month ago and I broke one of my ankles and my wrist.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to have a pity party because, honest to goodness, that was
It
just
probably ruined so
craptastic.
many things.
Right? It's crappy. And so I was like, okay, I need a day where I just get to wallow on the couch and I watch mindless
Yeah.
television and I eat ice cream and have a party with Ben and Jerry.
And I feel
And
better for
then,
now. And then
yeah,
I can
and
continue
just live
on
all that,
and
like, have a little
yeah,
wallow moment, right? But we can't
yes,
stay there.
because then we'll stay
So for
there.
me, I love to set a timeline on it. I've learned that in my many, many more than 16 years of life experience, approximately 40 more than that. So for me, it's like, okay, how big is this deal? How long of a pity party am I going to give myself? And sometimes it's like, okay, I get 10 minutes to just like scream and yell and be mad about it. And then I have to move on to something more constructive. And
Yes.
sometimes you need a day. I don't think it should
Or
probably be
yeah, you don't,
longer than a day that you
it
just
really
like
depends.
wallow.
Yeah. Because then
Yeah, but
it
it's
will become a
okay.
routine. It will become a routine and you'll constantly probably wallowing makes you feel worse. It could come in different ways. It really depends on what the pity is, or the pity party. It really depends what you're focusing on. But I think for me personally, like sitting in bed, like focusing on what went wrong for a certain amount of time makes me not want to get out of bed more, and makes me, I don't know, it just like puts off my whole, again, like the mental health, like it can ruin my mental health. And
yeah,
I could, because again, with like depression, it's already hard to get out of bed and do the normal things. But by doing that, I mean, can make it so much worse. And again, it's different for everyone. Based on what we
and
all
that's why I think a timeline is really helpful. And usually for me,
Yes.
it's in minutes. It's like, okay. And the other thing that does is it gives you permission to feel all of those feelings that
And
for most of us, you know, we got raised with that like good feelings and bad feelings list. And there's something about calling them bad or negative that makes us think, and some of us were taught that way too, that we shouldn't feel those ones. We should try and not dismiss those ones, but we should like replace them with something else. No, those ones also have something to teach us, and something
it could make it, and by dismissing it, could end up making it worse in the long run. Like, I'm not going to go too far deep into it, but my dad was kind of raised that way, of kind of being dismissed of certain feelings. And the way he did grow up kind of made it all so hard for him to adjust as an adult. And he's, again, he's in his 50s. He's been struggling with his whole adult life, and it's a constant thing of trying to figure it out. And that's a good, healthy choice that he decided to do for his children. But I think what matters is that he's working on it still after all the years, is that he's choosing to do this for his children, and he's working on it. And I think that's the positivity about it, even though he hasn't mastered it and there are bad days, there's still positivity in that, because he is trying and working on it for his children and grandchildren. You never, like, you know, like for the future.
Yeah, and we're going to be working on this kind of stuff forever. Like, I know that it seems
life
to
isn't
like
done at 50.
like this old guy.
Yeah. Well, literally. So like, I think he also had the idea that at a certain age, he didn't need to do it anymore, because
that's not the way life works.
Yeah. But I think the constant reminder that we're growing up, and that, you know, the way I am as a person, I'm always talking about, like, I'm the futuristic thinking. I'm always like, oh, what kind of house do I want? What job? Ooh, my kids' names. Like, it's not coming. I'm 16. I have a long time, whatever route I'm hoping. Maybe just, I'll be an adult, but no matter what time, it kind of showed him that he'll have children for the rest of his life. Like, he'll have us, and then he will gain probably son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, grandchildren, you know, some different people coming into his life that he can help by working on it. He doesn't need to, but he's choosing to.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, that's why we're on the planet, right? We're not here to be the same from the day that we get conscious till the day that we die. We're here to learn and grow.
Chaos makes the muse.
Right?
I mean, that's my favorite quote. I'm looking at it right now. I painted it on the wall in our basement, because I thought that I wasn't a perfect person, that everything went wrong and all this stuff, but no one's perfect. And there's always going to be something you need to work on.
Perfect is a myth. So let's just release that one now anyway. Nobody is, it's impossible.
And that's, again, a lot of people need to learn that. And that's another step to growing. And again, the grief thing, it intertwines with grief, because you think that you have to be this perfect person and you're not allowed to put your wall down and feel these emotions, or just build it in until boom, and it something happens.
Because it will come out somehow. So best we are just aware and let it come out when it first happens, and deal with it then. Until
it explodes and probably causes more of a mess.
Exactly.
I don't want to say like it will, but it will cause.
I will say that it will.
Yeah.
That's how emotions work. They will come out somehow.
And again, you probably have you have the right to say that more than me, as I am 16, as I will keep repeating this, because I don't want to make it seem like I think I know everything. even though my mom may say I think that, I don't. So again,
You know a lot of things, just like the rest of us. We all have our areas of expertise, and they expand and change and
and then
grow, and that's how it's supposed to be.
and we sometimes have our things we don't have expertise on.
Exactly.
And I will make it known that I'm not an expert. So, because I don't want
And
to,
even expertise is a growth, it changes over time and you learn
again, it's
more
like
and experience
mastering
different things.
something. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
mastering something. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many things. Like, I could go on about this for hours, but I'm gonna guess no one wants to hear me do that. Well, maybe some people, really depends. But I think again, and I think it's a good conversation for us two to have, as I'm not calling you old, but like with the different with the different age.
Mhm.
I think it's also is a good conversation to have for both of us to kind of, gives a view, but it also shows other people that how, I don't know what I'm saying, but I think it's just a good conversation to have between me and you. And I think you also got to think about that through, like, you're in high school, you can go talk to a counselor about this, or your psychologist, and they're probably, I'm not going to say they're old, but they've been through college, they've studied this, and they probably know ways to help you and have more of an expertise. There's just so many, like, with every person, again, but you may not know that and someone else does, but you might know more than what they don't. So I think,
Yeah. And it's
and
good to have safe friends to have these conversations with too,
yeah,
right?
and no matter, I think it's always good to have, you don't need to be like the bestest of friends. And I feel like some people may take it as, oh, you're sharing too much, but that just shows, I mean, you can't automatically assume that they weren't taught this, but it kind of does show a little bit of that they were kind of, they're shutting down, and they shut down their grief or their emotions into a whole nother way of, the way they think about it is, you're sharing too much, we shouldn't be talking about this because
Mhm.
this is a personal thing no one should talk about. But talking about it and sharing and spreading the information will grow a flower. It's like growing, like sprouting, it sprouts something, and it grows and grows and grows into something
Yeah. And
awesome.
if you think about how humans learn, right? Humans learn through story, and
Uh,
humans learn through sharing with each other what we're learning about and what we discovered. And, none of us can learn everything from scratch because it's impossible. So we
and we learn through
learn by sharing
mistakes. Yeah,
yeah, we learn from other people's mistakes and even just other people's experiences. It doesn't
yeah,
have to be a mistake. So
definitely.
I
And
understand it, especially with grief. A lot of people are more comfortable keeping it private, and that's totally fine.
yeah, definitely.
But then you need to be having that conversation with yourself, at least, hopefully, one or two other safe people. Because the other thing we know about grief, as much as it's individual, it needs witnessing. We need other people to understand and see what we're going through and to say that it's okay.
And then that could also help you get through it. Well, it probably
Mhm.
definitely helps you get through it, but also
Yeah.
helps you grow from there into teaching others. There's literally like so many things you could do with every experience, and not mistake, but like mistake that helps you grow, or anything. Like, you could say anything, and there's always an experience through it, and there's always something that you could use from that. And I think, I would say I'm mature for my age, and I think it is much harder for other kids, teenagers, young adults to have this knowledge that I do. I'm not going to say, again, I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but I think I do have the knowledge, and it is okay. It's not like I'm going boasting about it, but I'm going to use that to help others my age, or the people anyone who needs it. But it's also a really big thing on teenagers.
Yeah.
And I think as the new generations are coming in, parenting is becoming way different. It always
Mhm.
is. It always is changing. But I think the new parenting style, depending on, the person, the new kind of norm is having your kids be able to express it themselves through many things, and their grief and their happiness and their joy and their anger, and them, just being allowed to. I've seen it through, like, working with kids and babysitting and stuff, the new generation. And
Mhm.
I love that. But there's always going to be that part where they aren't, kids and people aren't that way. Again, that we can help. So
Yeah. And sometimes when it gets really big, it's hard to share too, when it feels overwhelming. And in
Yes.
some ways, that's when we need to share the most, because sometimes that really big, overwhelming thing is really hard to carry by yourself. And
Yes.
we're not supposed to be, humans are not designed to be by ourselves. We're designed to be in community. We're designed to
Oh,
be
yeah.
sharing with each other.
Like the
So,
dinosaurs. That's where it all not that's not even where it started. Probably. I don't know. I need to brush up on my ancient knowledge. Um,
but if you think
but
about it logically, right? If we study, how humans have evolved over time,
yeah,
it's in community. And now we
exactly.
live this weird, like, independent
Ugh,
individual life that kind of separates us from each other in a way that isn't
yeah,
always healthy.
exactly. And through ever through whoever you decide to like share it with, through a like I was saying, it could even like a therapist. Like everyone sees therapy as a negative view of something's wrong with you and that's why you're doing therapy. No, I think therapy can be for any type of thing. And
Mhm.
grief is, I think, again, like it's like you're talking to a therapist. You can, not everyone has the expertise as a therapist does, but it's still going to help you either way talking to someone.
Yeah, and nobody can fix it. We have to kind of get over that idea that someone can help us fix it. You can't fix it, but people can listen.
And share maybe their knowledge or knowledge they have about maybe how something worked for them. And you don't ever need to follow that, but it could also be nice to hear someone else's point of view, and maybe if they're ever willing to share their own experience.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know. I think for me, it's been very beneficial for just talking to people. And I think that's where it comes in, where people think I'm an oversharer. I've been called an attention seeker and overshare, and it's taken me a long time to learn that like some things are oversharing, but not necessarily